It's 1:47 a.m. in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona. The date is February 1st, 2026. The doorbell camera captures a masked figure outside the home of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. Within minutes, the camera is disconnected. By 2:28 a.m., the app monitoring Nancy's pacemaker loses its signal. When she doesn't show up for her Sunday morning church live stream, the community knows something is wrong. For weeks, the headlines have been relentless. Ransom notes demanding Bitcoin, a $1 million reward, evidence of a struggle on the porch. We've seen Savannah Guthrie, a face we usually trust to give us the news, standing before cameras with a trembling voice, pleading for the return of the woman who raised her. Savannah isn't hiding behind a mask of being okay. She is visceral and honest about her pain, sharing that she is blowing on the embers of hope, even when the wind feels like it's trying to put them out. But hope is a heavy thing we carry, whether we are waiting for news like Savannah or we have already said our goodbyes to our loved ones. Loss can leave us with a weight that can feel impossible to move. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth After Loss podcast. I'm Dr. Madi Marquez, a personal growth educator after loss. And today we are talking about that silent weight that we carry of being fine after our lives have been impacted by something unfathomable. While Savannah is bravely showing us what it looks like to sit in that fire of the unknown, in that rawness of grief, many of us respond to loss by doing the exact opposite. And that is that we fall into the I am fine trap. I don't know if you have, but I know I have in the past. And we sometimes build a wall. We build a wall of staying busy, of overworking ourselves. And we do this to distract our minds because the truth of the pain feels too big to hold. Today, we're exploring the very challenging struggle of that instinct to hide behind the I am fine trap. We're going to dive into why powering through this and saying I am fine and not processing that pain, that grief, can actually cost you your health, and how by following the lead of those who refuse to stay silent, we can finally learn to stop avoiding the pain and start to truly find ways to adapt to life after loss in ways that feel authentic to you and what you have been through. In my own research study on personal growth after loss, I've interviewed participants who reached a turning point. Many of them shared a similar epiphany. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but they shared that they finally got to this moment where they felt exhausted of feeling so much intense pain and sorrow. And that was the moment for them to do something about their grief. They were simply tired of feeling so much intensity and unrelenting pain. And I can relate with this because for me, not processing my grief, not knowing how to better support myself, almost cost me my own life. And trying to put a brave face when I was really drowning in my sorrow. But here's my heart for you today. I don't want you to wait until you are at that point of depletion or get to a point where I got to, because I want you to start supporting yourself after loss, to learn to live life without your loved one being here. Because as painful as this is, you also matter in this equation. And this process of adaptation, it does take time and it takes new experiences to engage in this. And my hope with you by listening to this episode today or by watching is that you don't have to hit rock bottom to start looking at different adaptation strategies that can be supportive in your journey of learning to live life after loss. Now, I want to go ahead and transition and look at the biological cost. So, what happens when we suppress our grief? And I want to preface this conversation because I understand that we can't constantly be processing our grief. Dosing our grief, it's more of an effective strategy that some of us can handle at times, right? Because pain and constantly thinking about this pain is exhausting. But the key here is to start doing something. So again, let's talk about what happens when we suppress our grief. But before we proceed, I want to ask you for a really small favor, and that is to hit that subscribe button to the podcast if you're listening to it. And I'm asking you for the small favor so more people can find this channel and hopefully be a beacon of support for them. So thank you again for subscribing and for listening to the show. Now, I want to get back to what we were talking about because we often, as a society, we treat grief like it's a mental choice. But the science actually shows that when we suppress our grief, our pain, our bodies end up paying the price. And this is very important to talk about because there is research in psycho-neuro-immunology, which is the study of interactions between behavior, neural, and endocrine function and immune processes. Research in this subject suggests that chronic emotional suppression actually keeps the body in a state of autonomic arousal, which is essentially being in a state of fight or flight response. Now, when you shove your grief down, your body stays flooded with the stress hormone, cortisol. So, our cortisol levels are elevated. And over time, this can lead to cognitive decline. So, research published in Psychological Science shows that the effort required to suppress our emotions actually taxes our prefrontal cortex, which can lead to this grief brain. And that impacts our memory and provides gaps in what we are trying to process. We have much poorer focus and the inability to regulate simple frustrations. Studies from the Heart Math Institute and others show that when we suppress our emotions, so we create this emotional distress, it can actually lead to an increase of pro inflammatory cytokines, which weakens your immune system and puts a strain on your cardiovascular health. Another fact that can happen if we continue to suppress our emotions and we don't provide an outlet for them, it's called the rebound effect. And a famous study by Daniel Wagner found that the more we try to suppress a thought, the more hyper accessible it becomes in our brains. By trying not to think about your loss, you are actually ensuring that your brain stays hyper focused on it. Now you might be thinking, I'll deal with my pain, with my loss, with my emotions when I feel a little bit stronger or when I feel a little bit more ready. But research argues that early integration is key to this. This doesn't mean getting over it faster because we don't get over our pain, our grief. We've been marked by this experience. We learn to adapt, live life in ways that we can integrate our loss into it. So, what I'm saying is that when we help our brains map a new reality, it actually helps that integration process in our life from loss to adaptation to eventually growth. Now, work from Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor from the University of Arizona, which is right where the Guthrie family is facing their crisis. Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor explains that the brain has to physically rewire itself to better understand that a loved one is gone. And if we avoid that pain, that processing, then we stall that rewiring process. And this update of our mechanical system can be helped through, again, engagements in new experiences. And of course, my friend, it takes time. This is not something that happens overnight. Now, I want to share a little bit about some research on post traumatic growth, which shows that deliberate rumination, meaning active, intentional processing, is actually a predictor of positive adaptation. And a study by Bonanno on grief trajectories found that individuals who engage in early emotional disclosure, meaning talking about your loss, about your feelings, or even writing about it, showed significant lower levels of long term depression compared to those who used repressive coping. By integrating the loss early, you aren't just helping yourself better support yourself through this process, but you're actually literally building a more resilient brain. So let's look at some supportive mechanisms that can actually help you along the way. Because let's get real here. We know that we don't move on from our experience of facing the loss of a loved one. We actually learn ways to live forward while carrying our loved ones with us. During this adaptation process, it takes time. And in my own research, a key component to this was intentionality, saying yes and engaging in certain experiences that can help you through that process. Now, we have a really good episode on that, which is episode 1 called The Power of a Three-Letter Word, and where you can learn more about the adaptation process after a loss. So I highly recommend you to check that out. I want to share with you 3 simple steps that you can start better supporting yourself after a loss. Step number 1, engaging in reflective journaling. And I know that sometimes it's really difficult to be able to articulate our emotions, what we're feeling, because we were not taught from childhood to do this. And now, as adults, we're facing this really big challenge, this big loss. And sometimes we don't know how to articulate our feelings. So, reflective journaling can actually be a really good, simple way to start doing that. And it doesn't have to be for a very long time. You can actually set a timer for 2 to 5 minutes and just start writing. Get a pen and paper and just start writing. You don't have to worry about grammar or vocabulary. Just let the pain out onto that paper. One of the most important things is one, set a timer. And then two, after you're done processing that pain, engage in something that brings you peace or joy or a little bit of happiness to counterbalance that processing that you just did. This teaches your brain that you can actually visit your pain without becoming a permanent resident of it. And one of the things that I just wrote about in one of my newsletters is a step by step guide on how to do this. So if you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, I recommend that you do that. And you can do that at drmadimarquez.com. There in my newsletter, I go into different adaptation strategies that can be supportive in your journey after a loss. Step number 2 is mindfulness. So, this is called the 4-7-8 breathing technique, which is one of my favorites. And again, this isn't just a breathing technique, it's a neurological hack for you, my friend. And I'm about to teach you how to do it. 1, you inhale for 4 seconds. 2, you pause and hold that breath for 7 seconds. And 3, you exhale that breath for 8 seconds. And what this little technique does that's so powerful, it actually stimulates the vagus nerve, which it tells your body that it's safe to downregulate those intense emotions that you might be feeling. It calms your body from that fight or flight response. So I love this breathing technique so much that I even use it when I'm at the dentist office. And even when I'm getting like an MRI, it's a little hack that you can simply do that can help calm your nervous system. Step 3, engage in conversations. Don't wait until you're too tired or depleted to speak about your pain, because that can actually do more harm than good. Reach out for support. Talk to a friend or family member or even a therapist. One of the things that was really beneficial for the participants in my research study was to join a support group with others who shared the same type of loss. If you have lost your husband or wife or your partner, join support groups with others who have the same type of loss because there's so much more commonality there. And you're able to not feel so alone in your own type of loss. Sharing your feelings honors your grief, and it can help prevent that from turning into that bubble of unresolved pain that eventually catches up to us. So, breaking the cycle of toughing it up and saying, I am fine, is probably one of the hardest work that you will ever do, my friend, but it is an avenue to find authentic growth after your experience with loss. Now, you do have the capacity to adapt to life in meaningful ways with purpose and joy and happiness while you still honor your experience of loss and you continue to remember your loved ones. So, if you're ready to explore this type of work and dive deeper into learning how to process your pain in ways that better align with you, then I invite you to join my emotional processing workshop, which you can find on drmadimarquez.com. Here, we use science-based approach and we leverage your personality to help you find ways to better adapt to life after your loss. And also make sure that you download my free guide on 3 science-backed techniques to help you regulate your emotions. Emotional regulation is such an important factor when it comes to our adaptation process after a loss. So, I've curated a guide for you that is simple to follow, has simple steps for you to help yourself in regulating your emotions. And I want to close this episode with, if you have any information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, and please call 1-800 call FBI. That is 1-800 225 5324. Nancy's family is waiting for any type of news, and it's such a hard position to be in. If you know of anything at all, call and report your tip. This concludes our episode for today. I want you to remember that your loss matters, you matter, and please, 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 please don't wait for that exhaustion, that moment of depletion to take action in supporting yourself after the loss of a loved one. Start your integration today. All right, my friend, take care.